Good morning.
How are you guys tonight?
Hope you're all rested. It's been a long winter. And as spring is upon us, there are worse things than snow, and that's freezing, falling rains in a mid-March day, which is gonna hit a lot of people soon, as it's hit a lot of us for a lot of years. And it's hard to sleep wet at night. It's hard to sleep wet in the day. Colorado doesn't have the best weather. Neither does Santa Fe. Neither does Florida. Neither does Portland. Neither does New York City. There's a lot of crazy things going on in the elements, and I think people should have the right to rest and right to be safe. And which reminds me of a song I once heard. I want to sit on this. Can everyone give us a good morning?
Good morning! Thank you.
This is lovely friend Cassie.
Hi.
And I'm the lovely Chad Duffy. We're called 3 Chords, 5 Crimes, because right now it's a crime to rest in public. Even if you have a job, if you have an apartment, if you just want to take a nap in the Capitol, you'll get woken up by state troopers and say, clean up, look like you're eating a salad. Don't close your eyes. Don't dream.
Yeah. Not in the library either. They kick you out. If you close your eyes, not as good. Close your eyes. Boot it out.
At Lila's, we would take shifts having someone sleep under the table and put coats over them. But not us, but like, you know. I'm no longer allowed in Lila's.
Should we?
Maybe. I don't have a guitar strap.
Let me help you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah. What's your name?
David.
Yeah, David on mic stand. I'm Chad on guitar.
Thank you.
And do you have an instrument? Cassie.
Yeah, hello.
Okay. Now we're 3 Chords, 5 Crimes. All right. When the blazing sun is gone, when you're looking for a home,
Yonder shine a
little light, a right to rest, yeah, sure be nice. Twinkle, twinkle, right to rest. Let it be, yeah, let it pass. A Colorado homeless Bill of Rights. Just peaceful people loving life.
the lonesome traveler in the dark. Thanks you for your tiny spark.
They could not find which way to go. You know, a jailhouse
It just ain't no home.
Twinkle, twinkle, right to rest. Let it be, yeah, let it pass. A Colorado homeless Bill of Rights. Just peaceful people living life.
In the dark blue sky you keep the right to rest, the right to dream. Shut our eyes till the sun is in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle,
Right to rest. Let it be, yes, let it pass. A Colorado homeless Bill of Rights. Peaceful people building life. A tiny home, a place that's warm. I know we're close, it can't be far. How I wished upon a star. Sons and daughters safe from harm. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Let it pass.
yes, let it pass.
A Colorado homeless Bill of Rights. Just peaceful people loving life. Sing it together. Twinkle, twinkle, right to rest. Let it be, yeah, let it pass. A Colorado homeless Bill of Rights. Peaceful people living life. Twinkle, twinkle, right to rest. Let it be, yeah, let it pass. A Colorado homeless Bill of Rights. Peaceful people loving life. you all for being here.
I'm
Thank
so
you,
glad that you guys
Cassie.
approve of this. So we're all in agreement then.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Beautiful. Thank you guys. Thanks so much.
And thank you to all the speakers. And good job for
Let's do some numbers.
Oh, that's not mine.
I need a thing.
Okay, I'm gonna just say welcome, you guys. Welcome, everybody. I want to point out that restrooms right over there. I'm gonna read this. It says "woo," but I think what they meant was "woo." We got a new report out. And all her students. Give it up for these guys. 1 o'clock. Give it up. Woo! It's not time to do stuff wrong. I just want to point out that this month, February 24th, at the Capitol, the Right to Rest bill will be there. I believe it's going to start at 1:30. Be there early. We'll probably be out front around 11 or so. So come on down, get up there, help us support this, please. It's really important. With that, I'm going to say it again. Thanks to you one more time. Thank you for Sturm Law School. They rock. They came down. They were just totally into what we were doing. I'm gonna turn this over. I'm supposed to do it I'm gonna turn this over to Natia right now. We got a little bit back.
Hey everybody, I'm Natia Moran, professor of the practice of law at the University of Denver Sturm College of Law. I had the great honor of teaching a group of really dedicated second and third year students that really took the time to delve into this issue. The issue came to us though through Denver Homeless Out Loud and Western Regional Advocacy Project. And the issue was this. What does it really cost Colorado to criminalize homelessness? And really it was an empirical question that we took, which is Colorado criminalizing homelessness? And so we took that as an empirical question, and what we do what good lawyers and researchers do, which is we collected data. It's not going to be nearly as fun as listening to the song we just did, but hopefully you guys will see sort of how we made our conclusions and why we think this is so important. So I'm here to introduce the students and to give you guys just an overview of what we're going to do today. It should last about a half an hour, and then we're going to leave lots of times for questions and answers. So let me introduce the students. So right now we have Ariel Schreiber. She's over there. Yay. We've got Allie Moore. We have Michael Lagarde. We have Becker Butler-Dines. We have Ellie Zweibel. We've got Kobe Webb. And so I'm going to introduce Allie Moore first. Allie's going to talk to us about the enactment of these ordinances and how we went about our research. Thanks.
Hello. So, like Professor Ann said, my name is Allie Moore. Can you hear me? I'm like this. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about how we discovered that Colorado cities were criminalizing homelessness. So the first thing that we did was we set out to find Colorado's anti-homeless ordinances, and this is at the city level, so municipal laws. What Ellie and Michael are holding, maybe they're obstructing. What Ellie and Michael are holding up is so these charts represent the 76 most populous cities in Colorado and their anti-homeless ordinances. So the way that we searched the city's municipal codes is we talked to members of Denver Homeless Out Loud. So, this way? Sorry, a little feedback.
We clearly do this a lot. Experience in the microphone department.
Okay. So we talked to members of Denver Homeless Out Loud about the kinds of things that police officers were telling them they could do and the kinds of tickets that they were receiving. We also worked with the Western Regional Advocacy Project that has conducted similar research in California and in Washington, and we came up with a list of search terms that would help us find the laws that criminalize the activities associated with homelessness. So we decided that a law would qualify as anti-homeless if it met a certain criteria. So that criteria was that the law would have to first disproportionately affect people who are homeless, and it would either have to reflect an intent to target homeless people or restrict a necessary life activity. Hopefully I'm not blogging enough, but a necessary life activity would mean something like urinating or defecating, sleeping, washing, things that you have to do just to be alive. And when people live outside, then laws that impact doing those things in public are going to affect them. So we came up with these criteria and a list of search terms, and we began to search every municipal code for the 76 biggest cities in Colorado. We turned up 351 ordinances that meet these criteria. So the next slide. So some of the most common types of ordinances that we found were restrictions on begging. Nearly every city has a law prohibiting public urination or defecation, and no cities have 24-hour publicly available restrooms. We also saw that laws prohibiting obstructing the sidewalk or laws prohibiting directly sitting or lying on the sidewalk were present in almost every jurisdiction. So if you check out our chart, and it works a lot better on the website, you can click through the links to read the text of each of these municipal ordinances, and you can see sort of they're categorized by the type of behavior that they prohibit. We saw a couple of trends as we opened and read every single one of these 351 ordinances, and we noticed that cities build momentum off one another. So when one city passes a camping ban, there would be records of other cities looking to that first camping ban and looking at that language and how it's implemented in the first city and deciding whether or not they want to expand that kind of law into their own city. There were a number of laws. One example is a law prohibiting loitering for the purpose of begging, which is just a ban on begging, and is almost certainly unconstitutional, as Ellie will talk about. But dozens of cities use the exact same language as one another in their municipal codes. So once one city decides to make a law, it sort of starts a trend, and it can spread the policy across Colorado, which is part of the reason we're talking about a state-level law with the right to rest. And then another thing that we noticed that was troubling about these codes is that there were a lot of ordinances that were either unclear or overlapped with one another. So for example, a city might have both a law prohibiting obstructing the sidewalk and a law prohibiting sitting or lying in public. So someone who is sitting in public could be obstructed both for, or could be cited, both for obstructing the sidewalk if they're sitting on the sidewalk, and could be cited for sitting in public. So this is sort of a common situation that we saw, which both makes it difficult for people because the police have discretion to choose which ordinance they would like to enforce against you, and is also problematic for us looking for public records because we're not exactly sure how cities are using their ordinances when they have multiple ordinances that criminalize the same behavior. So you can read a little bit more about each of those findings in the report if you like, but I'm going to turn it over to Michael, who's going to talk about the citations that were written under these ordinances we identified.
So I unfortunately have more numbers than Allie to say, so excuse me if I have to look down to make sure I get everything right. So what we did once we had that list of 351 ordinances was to file, well first we chose 23 cities of those 76. And these 23 cities were chosen based on geographic diversity, as well as population, or in some cases because they had a particularly high number of ordinances that criminalized homelessness. So based on those different factors, we chose 23 cities, which we felt were fairly representative of Colorado. These cities were in every region of the state and represented a significant chunk of the population of the state as well. So, once we've chosen those cities, we filed Colorado Open Records Act request with all of them. Colorado Open Records Act allows you to file a request with a local government or with the state for information. Specifically in these requests, we asked for things like the total number of citations under the entire municipal code, the total number of citations under the ordinances we identified as being anti-homeless, as well as information under both of those how many citations were going to homeless individuals. So both for the total code, all citations to homeless individuals, as well as citations to homeless individuals under the ordinances that we had identified for each municipality. We sent those record requests off, and we usually had to send 2 different ones, both to the police department and to the municipal court in the area. And we got back a wide range of information. Some cities were able to provide us with a lot of information. Other cities had a hard time providing any. And one of the things that complicated our report was that the majority of the 23 cities we sent requests to either did not have accessible records on homeless individuals or did not provide it because they didn't track it in an easy way. So they might note on the police ticket, for instance, that they're homeless, but there's no database that tracks that. So the only way we could have gotten information was for them to go back and check every single ordinance, which was time and cost prohibitive. So the important reason to point that out is that, once again, makes our count under-inclusive. There are 2 main reasons for this. The first, like I said, is it doesn't necessarily capture every single homeless individual because not every city responded with that information. 2, these are self-identified homeless individuals. So if the person identified as homeless, that was counted. If they gave the address of a local shelter or a mailbox that they might have at the post office, that would not show up as a homeless individual. The third reason this is under-inclusive of the actual enforcement is that no city that we contacted was able to provide us with move-on orders. So there's a difference between citations when the police actually give you an infraction. Sorry, is this better?
You can lift that up.
Can I get closer? There we go, that's better. If it will stay. So the third way that it's under-inclusive, there we go. The third way that it's under-inclusive is that it does not track move-on orders. No city that we requested information from was able to provide information when police had contact and then said, you're in violation of this law, you need to stop your activities or move to a different location. We weren't able to collect any of that information, and that happens anecdotally, from what we can tell, far more often than actual citations, which is the information that we are able to record. So all that is important to say, the numbers that we are able to give you are almost certainly under-inclusive for a lot of reasons. So here's what the information we have actually showed. The first is quite simply that many cities issue a disproportionate number of citations to homeless individuals under their ordinances. So the 3 cities we highlighted that had the most that we noticed were Grand Junction, Fort Collins, and Boulder. Now these are the percent of citations to homeless individuals under their entire municipal code. In all these cities, homeless people make up a small fraction of the total population, and actual citations that are being heard under the municipal code, they make up a large percentage. So that's the first thing that we noticed, and this is uniform across most of the cities that gives information on homelessness. Go to the next slide. The other issue, I want to point out some specific examples that are particularly stark. One of the worst examples of this is in Boulder with their camping ban. In Boulder, there was a total of 1,767 citations under the camping ban from 2010 to 2014. Now this is stark both in the absolute terms, because the next closest city was Fort Collins, which issued 861 citations over that same 5-year period. So they're enforcing their camping ban at a much higher rate. But we also know that the majority of these citations are going to homeless individuals. The graph on, I guess, your left shows that 87% of these citations went to homeless individuals. So we can see that this particular camping ban is being enforced very heavily in Boulder, and it's overwhelmingly going to individuals who are homeless. So this is one way that enforcement of these local municipal codes are impacting homeless individuals. The next thing I want to focus a little bit on Denver to give you an idea of what's going on locally here. So if we can go to the next. So this might be a little bit hard to see. There's a lot of information, but the main points I wanted to make about this is that, first of all, we found 11 homeless ordinances. These are just 4 of them, and I chose these 4 to highlight to you because they have over 200 citations per year, and in 2014, half of those citations were going to homeless individuals. So the first you can look at is panhandling, where a total of 82% of the tickets issued in Denver in 2014 went to homeless individuals. When you look, at urinating in public in 2014, 49% of them, almost 50%, went to homeless individuals. When you look at park curfews and closures, 60% of those went to homeless individuals. And perhaps one of the most interesting and alarming things that we found in the study when we looked at Denver was that 53%, almost 54% of trespass citations went to homeless individuals. Now the reason that is particularly interesting is that they issued over 1,000 citations to homeless individuals just in 2014. So there's clearly, when the homeless population in Denver is roughly 0.5% of the total population, yet 1,000 citations, over half of all trespassing citations, go to homeless individuals. There's clearly a disparate impact on what's happening with homeless individuals in the enforcement of local ordinances. So that's, in brief, some highlights of what this looks like and what happens at the enforcement at the local level. But this is only the impact of how these laws are locally enforced and the data we're able to give, which goes into more detail in our reports and our city spotlights, which are available. But the other thing that we wanted to look at was, now that we know they are ordinances being passed by municipalities that disproportionately impact the homeless, we want to look at the cost. So Becca Butler-Dines is going to present on what we found in terms of how much these enforcements of anti-homeless ordinances cost the state of Colorado and local municipalities.
Hi, I'm Becca Butler-Dines. So the focus that I had on this report was majority of crunching some numbers. When we were contacted by DHOL originally, one of the reasons that they felt that the Right to Rest Act failed last year was due to the fact they didn't have an ability to articulate the financial implications of criminalizing homelessness. So that was one of our main goals to accomplish this past 6 months. We focused specifically on Denver's cost as a case study. We did this because Denver had the best data in terms of breaking out specifically how many citations were issued overall under a specific ordinance, how many of those citations were specifically identified as being given to someone who identifies as homeless, or the word that Denver uses is transient. And then further, we were able to gain the case numbers from every single citation within 5 ordinances that we identified, and we hand searched each case number on Denver County Court's website, and to learn their disposition as well as the amount of jail time that they served due to that citation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. I'm sure you will all have questions, and so we have time to answer some of those. We also on the website have our 3 Excel spreadsheets that really break out our math and our methodology, and further that is in the back of the report. But just to explain a little bit about what we did. So we took Denver's information and we identified 5 of their ordinances that we felt criminalized homelessness and would be, basically when we researched, it would be the most specific to homelessness. Trespassing is a huge issue in Denver. The city of Denver or the police choose to issue trespassing tickets. Yet, when we went to do our research, we felt that for every trespassing ticket we could identify that was given to possibly someone who was homeless, we identified just as many that someone was not homeless. And so we chose not to have that be in our 5 list to analyze the cost, because we didn't want our data to be skewed in that form. So we chose the camping ban, the park curfews and closures, panhandling, solicitation, and urinating in public. Just to understand a little bit about the numbers that we were going off of, Michael spoke about them earlier. The camping ban in 2014, so we only focused on 2014 to kind of come up with our base number, and then we extrapolated that to further years and then to other cities. Okay, so the camping ban in 2014, and remember this ban has only been around for a couple of years. 2014 is the only year thus far, not counting 2015, that Denver has data of issuing a citation under the camping ban. There were 15 citations issued total. 14 of them were issued to individuals that were homeless. Under curfews and closures, there were 998 citations issued, and 600 of those were issued to homeless individuals. For panhandling, 358, 294 of those were to homeless individuals. Solicitation on or near a street, 22, 17 of those. And lastly, urinating in public, there's 491 issued by the city of Denver. 244 of those were issued to homeless individuals. So we followed some of the methodology that we had gained from the Western Regional Advocacy Group, as well as other reports that have tried to analyze the cost. So we broke out the enforcement costs into 3 separate categories: policing, adjudication, and incarceration. My colors match my lovely graph over here, or chart. Sorry, you can't see them on the PowerPoint. But breaking out policing, so policing is in purple here. The cost of policing includes the cost of issuing a citation, as well as the cost of arresting an individual due to a failure to appear. So when we went online and we started searching each case disposition, we weren't able to identify if someone was arrested on the spot or at a later point. Because we tried to be as conservative in our number crunching as possible, we took every citation that had a failure to appear. As many of you know, a lot of these citations result in a failure to appear because the individuals who are being issued them do not have modes of transportation to get to the courthouse, do not have services to allow them to attend court. So what happens is they're issued a failure to appear when they do not appear in court on their summons date, and then a warrant is issued for their arrest. We calculated the cost of arrest in the policing, but only on the number of failures to appear. The cost in 2014, the total cost of policing for these 5 ordinances was $260,000. I would also like to just preface that we really tried to be conservative. We tried to be very, I guess, better word said, like choosy. And we tried to be extremely picky in what we calculated because we didn't want our numbers, we wanted our numbers to be able to stand up and hold up. So we do feel that all of these numbers that we present in our report and today are under-inclusive, as we've already spoken about. So moving to adjudication. So adjudication is the court cost. It does not include the public defender, because oftentimes an individual who receives a citation like this and who goes to court will have to wait a week or so to be assigned a public defender. Denver does have a really unique experience in the sense that they do have a municipal public defender's office, which not all municipalities have. On average, the city of Denver calculated that it costs $174 a court case in Denver's General Sessions, which is their municipal court. So calculating that for 1,169 citations that were issued under those 5 ordinances in 2014, Denver spent $203,406 in 2014. And then finally, incarceration. As many of you know, these ordinances have a maximum, specifically within Denver, of a $999 fine and an up to a year in jail. Yet we rarely saw that implementation or sentence. What we saw is 1 to 2 to 3 days in jail. On average, more than $53 a day to house someone in Denver County Jail. So calculating that, we got to $277,600 $695.01 on incarceration costs for 2014. So we took all of that and we added it up to get our total cost of enforcement for 2014, which was $742,790.18. We applied then this methodology and extrapolated it to all of the citations that were issued between 2010 and 2013 and added that together to get a total cost that Denver spent from 2010 to 2014 by enforcing these anti-homeless ordinances was $3,236,382.28. So basically a little bit more than $3.2 million. We took that information and we wanted to then it kind of extrapolated to get an example of what are other cities spending. We recognize that the city of Denver, what they spend on in 24 hours for 1 day in jail is different. So we took the numbers. So we took the number of each, we took Denver, Boulder, Colorado Springs, Durango, Fort Collins, and Grand Junction, and we identified the most discriminatory anti-homeless laws that they had. So that included their panhandling, their camping. Those we felt we could guarantee explicitly targeted homeless individuals. So we took that information and we applied the cost and extrapolated out to Denver, Boulder, and the rest of the cities to get a total of, in 2010 to 2014, these cities spent $5.1 million enforcing these ordinances. I would just like to leave off with the fact that, yeah, $5.1 million does not seem like a lot in the sense of a whole statewide budget. Yet, we also identified it a huge amount of much more cost-effective as well as morally acceptable and effective in the sense of long-term solutions for alternatives that not only Denver, but all the other municipalities should be focusing on. Putting that money towards long-term solutions is a lot better direction that the state of Colorado should be going. I'm going to now introduce Ellie. He focused on the constitutionality of these ordinances, and he's going to speak now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Becca. It's an honor to be here with my colleagues, Professor Rand, and of course our partner Denver Homeless Out Loud, to speak about the constitutionality of passing and enforcing these ordinances that, as Michael had mentioned, disproportionately impact the homeless community. Specifically, we identified a few ordinances that, in particular, either the Supreme Court or the Federal District of Colorado have identified as being violating or violative of individuals' civil liberties. First and foremost, this past year there was a landmark ruling here in the District of Colorado. Judge Arguello found that a panhandling ban in Grand Junction was actually violative of First Amendment right to freedom of speech. So because of this and in the wake of this, many cities in response either settled active cases or put a moratorium on enforcing their panhandling bans. So there's a very clear shift happening. It hasn't completely happened yet. Hopefully this report and what will ensue will, as well as the bill on the floor, will continue to push in that direction. One of those suits that settled was in Fort Collins, which settled to say that they will eliminate most of their provisions that ban panhandling or begging. Of note, this does not impact aggressive panhandling. Another noteworthy case that is currently in federal courts is Bell versus City of Boise, Idaho. In this case, the Department of Justice, the Federal Department of Justice, has indicated that their camping ban in the city of Boise is unconstitutional because it is cruel and unusual punishment, violating individuals' Eighth Amendment rights. They link this to the fact that the city of Boise only has a certain number of beds available in their shelters every night, and yet that does not meet the demand for the number of people in the homeless population in the city of Boise. This reasoning can be extrapolated to other types of ordinances, such as sit-lie prohibitions, where individuals very clearly need to rest at some point, and not allowing them to do so in a provided space seems cruel and unusual, and then further going on to punish them for doing a humanly necessary activity. Another ordinance that some municipalities still have lingering on the books are vagrancy ordinances, which in 1972 the Supreme Court found unconstitutional because it violates individuals' due process rights, does not give them proper notice. In the wake of all these, we wanted to also contextualize that these ordinances fit into an unfortunate history in the United States of laws and legal mechanisms that criminalize people based on their status. You can think about Jim Crow or sundown laws, which criminalize basically one's race or nationality. You can also think about anti-Okie laws, and when during the Dust Bowl migrations, when individuals were moving west, that made it illegal for people to either come through the town or house people coming through the town. So we believe that these anti-homeless laws are actually the next phase in this unfortunate legacy of criminalizing individuals based simply on their status. And we make such an assertion in our report. At this point, I will pass it along to Kobe to wrap things up.
Hi everybody, thank you for coming. So kind of to pull this back to the reason why most of you are here today, the Right to Rest Act. My colleague Michael mentioned earlier that we did case studies on different cities in Colorado, and we did case studies on Pueblo, Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, Colorado Springs, Grand Junction, and Durango. Now these cities, the city spotlights we didn't make it into the larger reports. If you go to the website, you can see their individual reports, and it talks about how the cities are enforcing ordinances differently, what they choose to cite people for, what they are doing to help the homeless in their community. And one of the things that we found a trend is that cities enforce different ordinances. Many of them might have a sit-lie ordinance on the books, but they also have a trespass law. One city will issue citations under camping bans to most of the homeless citizens, while another city issues them all under trespass law. So we can work and have the courts overturn some of these laws like they did in Grand Junction because they're unconstitutional or they're discriminatorily enforced, but we can't overturn a trespass ordinance because that's not clearly an anti-homeless law. So the findings of this report go to show that we need statewide action. And the Right to Rest Act, House Bill 161191, goes to ensure that there's an affirmative right for homeless people in the state of Colorado to camp in their car, to sit on the streets, to make sure that cities, if they want to ensure people are not urinating on the street, they provide a 24-hour bathroom for them instead of just citing them and perpetuating this cycle of poverty. So at this point, we are taking questions. My colleagues will come back up and join me.
On where they can be, or can they be at certain places at certain times?
So I think, so the question is whether or not there are random citations about where people can be or if people can be in certain places at certain times. That depends a lot on the jurisdiction. So some cities have trespass laws that explicitly state they can be applied to public places once a person has been asked to leave. So under that law, if a police officer asks you to leave and you don't, you can receive a trespass citation. Cities maybe use those ordinances for different purposes. Unfortunately, we weren't able to discern a lot of that from our data. There's also a lot of laws about park closures, so you're not able to be in a park after a certain hour. Yeah, so, follow-up question?
That was my second follow-up question was, are all parks off for that?
So that also depends on the jurisdiction, but the most common park law that we would see is that you cannot be in a park during the hours the park is closed, which often will be like from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or from sundown to sunup, and if you're in the park during those hours, then you can be cited.
I will just add one other small fact to that, like it was what Ali was saying. There was one city that we saw a decrease in trespass laws one year, but then we also saw the same increase in citations under the park curfew laws. So we can kind of see they're citing at the same level for the same basic offense, they're just using different ordinances, and that actually happened in one of the cities we looked at.
Darren?
So what would you say to, for example, Boulder's city attorney who last year defended laws like this and actions against homeless people as being necessary to get them into services and to direct them to help?
Sure.
While that notion is a noble one, and we obviously support that notion, quite simply, Boulder does not offer enough services. And frankly, that's a bit of an apples and oranges argument. Boulder should increase services, obviously, but at the same time, they need to reduce the criminalization of individuals if they do not have enough services to provide for those people who they are ticketing and citing.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up to that exact issue. Based on what you said before, on the case in Boise, and there's not enough services and people get criminalized for it, if I understood you correctly, the judge ruled that that was unconstitutional.
Not yet in that case. That case is in a bit of a procedural quagmire because it's obviously a class action and the name of the plaintiff on it has changed. So there actually has not been a ruling yet on the merits of that particular case.
Okay.
Yeah, right there. Sorry. And the glasses in the hand of the next year. Yes.
Since the second presenter, but you had two columns, like I think it was one from 2013, one from 2014, and then the percentage of citations going to homeless individuals. And it seemed like the numbers increased considerably from one year to the next. Do you have any theory as to why that changed?
No, sorry, it's next one. That one. Yeah. And so we actually, we're working on what exactly charge we're going to try to put up some of the actual citation information that we have, but we haven't finalized the form that we're going to make that available. But I can say under all of these ordinances, there was that steady increase both in the total number of citations to homeless individuals and the percentage of citations under that ordinance to homeless individuals. As to why, that's a little bit outside the scope of what we researched. I will say something that came up in multiple cities that probably had at least some impact in around 2012 was the Occupy movement. There's a lot of things that are wrapped up with that that might account for some of it, but clearly that movement is not nearly the presence it is now, and the status of percentage and total numbers remain incredibly high. So it's hard to say.
How about in the back there?
So we're gonna have folks with a question
Come up here.
come
Awesome.
up to the
Perfect.
microphone.
Great.
I've got a question. And who did you call in?
Just the guy back there. Go ahead.
Great. Ed. So first, thank you for all of your work. Secondly, so as you said at the beginning of this presentation, this is underrepresented of the actual costs for a number of different reasons. And so, so two questions. One, I know that NOFA requests or Freedom of Information Acts, they're not free. So, which has been part of D-Hole's difficulty in arguing these things. So if we could get a picture of how much it costs just to find out this information. And then secondly, if you've done any work on trying to do an estimate of that greater cost.
Sure. So the responses for our open records requests varied across the state, across the cities. But a majority of them said, well, we can go and dig through all these citations and hand look at those, but that would take many hours and thousands of dollars. And so we had a somewhat generous budget given to us from our Dean Marty Katz of the University of Denver Law School, but it didn't it didn't have enough in it to look at all of the citations and all of the data that the cities were going to charge us for. And so we picked and choose. We chose the cities that we knew that would be representative, Denver in particular. And so for the 6 cities that we sort of highlight for the cost report, we did pay a little bit more for those. How much would it cost to actually do a comprehensive look? We did not estimate that. It was outside our private university budget, if you can imagine.
And an estimate as to any work you've done on an estimate as to how much it costs the state to enforce these. I guess, how representative is this figure of $5 million?
So we took the numbers from Denver's 2014 citations of those 5 ordinances. So we then applied them to other cities. We utilized the jail costs for each city, so we didn't utilize Denver's and apply it to Durango's. However, in the sense of knowing explicitly what, say, Durango's 15 citations, how many of those resulted in jail time, or in Colorado Springs, we didn't have access to that. Hence why we utilized Denver as a case study, because they had such transparent information. And so it is an estimate and it is a projection, yet we feel very confident in the numbers that we utilized for Denver, and by tinkering with them a little bit to apply to a very small portion of the ordinances that are outside of Denver in different municipalities, we feel pretty confident that $3.1 million is a valid number.
I think there's one other component to that question, is that we looked at about 19 ordinances. If you count Denver and the other cities, there are 351 ordinances that we counted. So we have no idea, if you looked at the citations written under all 351, what that cost number would be. And it would cost many thousands of dollars to get the data to find that out. So this is not even close to representative of either the citations issued across the state or the collateral costs associated with being put in jail. So sort of the cost of having a criminal record and how that impacts your job search and your education, the cost of being in jail instead of being at school. We just didn't have a way to estimate those costs. So this is just a way to show the state that what we're doing by using municipal ordinances to criminalize is not free. It costs money directly, but this is very, very underrepresentative of the total cost to the state.
Thank you.
You already answered my first question, which was about any idea of the cost of criminalization. I think page 28 of this report is the scariest. That idea that being incarcerated prevents you from escaping the situation at all, and the cost that has both to the individual and to the economy. The second question to Ali on the Constitution, or to Ellie, sorry. Is there a constitutional argument against prohibiting someone from going into housing based on a criminal record? Because it seems like that should be something which is against any constitution that promises liberty to individuals.
I mean, that question is beyond the scope of this report. Certainly other advocates have made equal protection claims. However, thus far, the Supreme Court of the United States has not ruled as such. It seems as though Professor Rand has something to add.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that, because this is one area that I've looked at pretty extensively, which is that there is a movement to sort of ban the box, right? To ask questions on employment applications for one's criminal background, right? And there have been several cases that have gone through the courts that where advocates have challenged, actually, that it violates the Civil Rights Act because it has a disproportionate effect on people of color, because they have more contacts with the criminal justice system. And so those have actually been successful in several cases. So I think maybe not a constitutional challenge, but a statutory challenge based on one's race.
My addressing question is for all the families and all the people out there, because I heard there were cutbacks on Section 8 living, and that needs to be Where are the disconnected peoples and parties gonna go where they don't get criminalized for being on the street then?
So I think that first up, I just want to remind that we really tried to keep our scope in the report limited and a way that multiple audiences could take the information and advocate for the homeless communities all around Colorado. We are aware that there has been a reduction in Section 8 vouchers, and there's been a balance between, you know, there's an argument that saying some of that money is going to other affordable housing developments. So I don't think that Denver is unique or the state of Colorado is unique to that struggle, but that was not specifically something that we looked into. We didn't feel like that was something we could truly advocate in that direction. We just focused on the criminalization part of the citations that are criminalize homelessness.